So, and in terms of participating to the policy making, do the service users and family members are participating to as a part of policy maker, such as committee in the UK?
Yes. Yeah. So at every single level, there are service users participating actively in that process. So at the top level, you have people who, when we're designing national policy, you have large service user populations there who are involved. For example, the National Clinical Director for Mental Health, a guy called Tim Kendall, he's retiring, is just retiring actually. All of the large national programs that he chairs for the national mental health system, he co-chairs them with a lived experience service user and himself. Okay, so that shows at the very top national level, you always have that collaboration. And then they have large panels of lived experience workers who work within government and the policy development. Then in terms of organizations, when they come to the organization, every organization you should have lived experience workers involved in major work streams. So whenever there's a change program or a major work stream, you have the lived experience workers embedded into that and into the major so committees within organizations, you have them in that. Then when it comes to the delivery of care itself, you should have peer workers in every team, engaged in the team, helping to deliver the care, using their lived experience to support patients. So at every level they're involved, strategically, managerially, locally and nationally. And that's kind of happened over the last 20 years. If you go back 20 years ago, there'd be probably none of this. Now it's all the way through. And it's been a huge benefit. So for example, we had some documentaries in this country last year that showed some terrible examples of really bad practice in inpatient wards, lack of compassion, and patients having a very bad time. And what's happened actually, the NHS England have engaged in a large process of co-production with peer workers, with the lived experience community for some time, in terms of really understanding what it is that needs to change in inpatient wards. And they've produced these excellent new standards for inpatient care, which is very different to how care is delivered now. But it can only have been that very, very high level, very impressive kind of document because they used a lived experience community to help to produce that. So it's very important, impressive. It's made a big difference. So on the one hand, you've seen this build-up of service users being engaged within our system, and now what we're seeing is that beginning to have an impact and gradually changing the system over time as well, which is very, very helpful. Yeah.
So it is that in every level of service training and service delivery, the service users are participating as some formal provider groups. Yes, thank you.
That's right. Yeah, and also training of staff. Whenever we do them, we usually have them co-produced and co-delivered these days as well. That's key as well.
Training of staff. Yes.
Yeah, of staff. Yeah.
And on the other hand, in Korea there are several debates about the interest on the peer supporters or service users can contribute to support legal capacity of the service users, such as advocate activity or supported decision making by peer supporters, especially under the situation of involuntary admission or treatment. So in the UK, the service users are acting in that kind of role to support other people from the viewpoint of legal capacity.
Yes. So we have something in here called the IMHAS. So you have mental health advocates, basically. So whenever somebody is engaged in, say for example, that they're going to be assessed for a section of the Mental Health Act, or looking at potential detention and things like that, you have an automatic right to have an advocate in that process, and that's somebody who's had their own lived experience. Okay, so that advocacy role within the system, particularly at points at which the law is involved or restrictions are involved, then they will be a core person involved in that. In addition, and the tribunal system, where somebody you can appeal to a tribunal if you're on the section. The people with lived experience can often sit on the tribunal as well. You'll often have a layperson in the tribunal, as well as a lawyer, as well as a psychiatrist, who will hear the case and make a determination as to whether or not that section, that restriction, can continue. And again, lived experience is very often very involved in that too. Yeah.
My next question is that well, we hold that nowadays you are acting as a leader of Department of Compassionate and Relational Psychiatry in the Royal College of Psychiatrists. So we are quite interested in which kind of changes do you want to make in the field of psychiatry in the UK?
Yeah, sure. So, my belief is that our system is not very conducive to having relationships at the center of the system. Our system is organized in a fragmented way. People go from one team to another team. There isn't good continuity of care. And the way that our system is organized tends to be focusing on medication as the only route to therapy, to cure. And while medication is important, and we will always use medication, it will always be essential and fundamental to the delivery of mental health care, there isn't enough understanding of the clinician being the agent of change. Right? There isn't enough understanding of the therapeutic potential that the clinician has in order to make real change. And so I'm very passionate about that. But if you rewind about 50, 60 years ago, clinicians often saw themselves as the route to enable people's recovery. But that's sort of diminished to the point where we're left as being technicians, where you have technical things, whether it's medication or other technical things that people do. And we need to change that, we need to change that into one in which we have a holistic connection with the patient, because there's so much good evidence that the relationship that the patient has with the clinician makes a big difference to their outcomes. There's fantastic research around that for the last 30 years that really shows how that relational aspect of care makes a really massive difference to the outcomes. And as one psychiatrist who's I'm a great sort of admirer of Gwen Atchett put recently, our words are our surgical tools. So the way we talk has a big impact on actually people's recovery and what happens. So I've spent years researching that. That's been my kind of field of expertise over many years. How can we deliver our care in a way that enables that relationship to be at the center and enables clinicians to really learn about all the time, improve themselves in that area? And so there's a few things that I think that we really need to do. One is we need to think about how to create systems that improves continuity of care. The other thing we need to do is to help clinicians with skills development, to really develop the skills you need to really get good at listening, to have that open space where you can really build that strong trust, to move away from a culture in which we're interviewing patients to extract information from them to one in which what we really also want to do is to enable them at the end of that connection to feel heard. Right? And so to make sure that somebody feels heard is a very different imperative and requires some different skills. In fact, there are brain scans that show that it requires different parts of our brains to be used to make sure someone's feeling heard, as opposed to trying to extract information from them. So some real skills development for that. I've been teaching this for many years, and I still go to training on it all the time to really improve and perfect my understanding, my abilities in this area. The other thing is personal development. I think that we can only really develop good relationships with patients if we can have those good relationships with ourselves first. So working on ourselves, whether it's in mindfulness, our own therapy, other forms of psychological and emotional support, is crucial for us to be able to work with people in distress and forge relationships with them. So I think that's also a crucial part of it. I think another important part of it is the way in which teams sort of have meetings and have discussions about patients and have reflective practice. So, short rounds is something that's beginning to sort of take root across the physical health system. There's similar examples of that in mental health, where actually clinicians are able to be open with each other about their experience, about how they're feeling and their subjective experiences, and then others can reflect on that. So a reflective way of thinking about our patients and our care can go a long way towards really binding teams together, really connecting them, and really helping to improve those relationships we have with patients, because we also have that space ourselves. So reflective practice is really essential. And the other thing I'd say is that we really need to be able to get better at measuring the quality of care in terms of really understanding the patient experience. So there are some scales out there that help, if you ask patients after sessions they've had with clinicians, they can help us understand things like do I feel really heard? Did this person really, was it they interested in me as a whole person? Did I have control over the decisions that were made? Things like this, I think we need to start measuring routinely so we get an idea of what is really making a difference, and where sort of areas are that patients really are being heard and where they're not being heard. So we know where to sort of emphasize and put our, put additional support and training in. So, I think these are the kind of things we can do to really improve relationships and put them at the center of care. There are new models of care like open dialogue and other things currently being researched, which I think can also help us to really potentially think about, broadening that out into a wider system as the evidence develops. So I think, the evidence base is building for this. I think it's an exciting time now where all these things are becoming possible. But that's what I'm focusing on in my role as the sort of compassionate and relational care lead for the Royal College of Psychiatrists, because I see that as that is the sort of next area that we really need to conquer in really improving mental health care in our country and indeed around the world.
Yes, I think that it's quite inspiring plan, promotion of new model of care or collaboration in the mental health. So you are promoting that kind of model. So in this future model, how about the role of service users in new model of care? How about the new role? Yes.
Sure. So the new model that we're currently, I've been sort of leading the research on open dialogue. As I mentioned before, we call it peer-supported open dialogue because we see peer workers as essential to be in every team. So we've insisted that in every open dialogue team, we have a peer worker who's kind of at the center of that team. And that means that they can be involved in every team meeting. They can help us to understand what their actual experience is like, and they can be involved in as much as possible in meeting patients too, and share that experience in the way I was describing earlier. So in this more relational model of care, I think peer working is vital. Having that at the center of that model of care is crucial. And it requires extra work on the part of the organization to hire these workers, to support them, to integrate them and to integrate the system with them. But it's well worth it because I think it helps to root the culture of the team in one that's very respectful, one that's relational, and one that is really valuing the wisdom gained by lived experience too. So I think it's a vital part of new and future models of care.
Yes, my final question is that in this conference in Korea, probably hundreds of professionals and service users and their family members who are very passionate on recovery-based treatment approach are participating in your lecture. So would you like to say something to the whole audience in Korea regarding the role or participation of service users?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the only way we can improve our services is by integrating service users into our services. I think the days in which you have professionals here and service users here, and one is above the other, trying to help, those need to go. Really, we need to get to a stage where we're working together collaboratively as partners, and that means at every level. That means in the strategic level, understanding how we can create our system, develop our system, create our policies. At the kind of managerial level, in terms of understanding how we manage our services and support our teams, and at the therapeutic and clinical level, in terms of when we're meeting with families and working with patients. I think that having people with lived experience at all of those levels can make a big difference to really taking our care and transforming it to a new place. That's what's happened in the UK over years. It's continuing to happen. We're probably still relatively early stages, but it's been growing a lot in the last 20 years. And that is having a very positive impact on our services and ultimately the direction in which they travel. And so I think if you really want to improve services, get better care for patients and better outcomes, integrating peer workers all the way through will be a key thing that makes the difference and really helps this to sort of the shift to happen.
Yes, thank you so much for your brief presentation and the Q&A session. So just after this video, there will be a live Q&A with the audience and with you. So the chairperson of this symposium will provide consecutive interpretation. Thank you so much.